qualifying round seems like it will take place in the Discord, I think. I might be wrong on that, but right now it seems like it's taking place in Discord. I would definitely recommend getting Discord if you can. We have another question in chat. So for our mentors, after this, will we get them or no? That is also a great question. We actually just set up the channels for all of the mentors, and we're currently in the process of assigning them. In fact, right after I finish this workshop, I'll be working with the rest of the staff to assign your mentors. Another question in chat. Where is Craig? Unfortunately, Craig is not going to be in this workshop, but who knows? Maybe he'll pop up later. And Rob, I do believe you're correct. You do need Discord in order to register for the Among Us tournament, I believe.
How do we verify our emails in Discord? Because I was trying to do it, but like I never got that email. How do we verify our emails?
Gotcha. And this is for verifying your Discord account, right?
But like I never got that email. Yeah.
Yeah, so check your inbox again. It might have ended up in spam for some reason. And if you still don't see it, just let me know or let another staff member know. We can try to fix it for you.
Okay, let me see if it's in my spam.
All right, it is 8:02, so we'll get started with the workshop pretty soon. I'm going to answer a couple more questions from the chat about the event in general, and then we'll get started. So another question in chat. If we have a team, will a mentor choose us, or I guess you're asking if you will have to choose a mentor. That is a great question. Mentors will automatically be assigned, so there's no choosing in the process. It's just automatically assigned. Another question is, what sessions is Craig going to be in? I don't know. You have to see. Other question, for the Among Us tournament qualifying and final round, do you talk in the Among Us chat or in the Discord? Jay, that is a great question. I don't know off the top of my head because I'm not running that tournament. But if you want to, I can forward that question to a staff member after this workshop. And last question I'm going to answer in chat before we get started with the workshop. For the Among Us tournament, where do we sign up for it? You should sign up for that in the Discord. Lola beat me to it. Alrighty, so with that, let's get started with today's workshop. Before we do begin, at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me, either by unmuting yourself or put your questions in the chat. I'll make sure to have it pulled up on a different screen. So first of all, if you want to follow along with today's workshop, and I strongly recommend you to, please go ahead and open up the web browser of your choice. I would recommend using Google Chrome, but pretty much anything else like Firefox, Safari should work. Once you do so, you should go to a website called editor.construct.net, and I will go ahead and put a link to that in the chat.
I just have a question. What web browser are we going to?
Yeah, you can use whichever one you want. I personally would recommend Google Chrome, but whatever you have should work.
Wait, you mean like we are going to Google, like the website Google, or are we using, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, so you use Google Chrome and then you go to the website editor.construct.net.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and if you need a link, the link can be found in the chat. Alrighty, with that, let's get rolling. So before we jump into actually creating this game, let's watch a really quick YouTube video. I'm not sure if my audio will come through, but the video itself is pretty fun. Alrighty, so based on this video, today we'll be making a game where we will have Bill Gates jump over a chair. And yeah, believe it or not, that is a real video of Bill Gates. Alrighty, let's get started. So first of all, click the New Project button up here. Once you do so, come up with a name for your project. I'm going to name mine Bill Gates Jumping Over Chair. I'll give you guys a second to come up with a name. And in the meantime, don't touch any of the other settings on this page right now. We'll go over that later.
Excuse me, are we doing this with our team or solo?
You can do this solo. This is just an example project that we'll be working through. And afterwards, if you want to, you can go back and create a project with your team.
And I have one more question. For this whole competition, this is in general. Can we work alone, or should we have a mandatory group to work with?
Yeah, you're totally okay if you want to work alone. But oftentimes it's a lot more fun if you work with other people. We have a question in chat. Should our name for the project be Bill Gates Jumping Over a Chair? No, it doesn't have to be that. I just came up with that for my project. You can name it whatever you want. Awesome. Now, once you have a name for your project selected, hit create, and you should see a screen like this. So this is what the construct editor looks like. In the center, where the white screen is with the dotted lines, that is what we call the world map. This is where you'll see all of your characters, sprites, and other game characters. To the left, you'll see the properties menu. We'll talk a little bit more about that soon. And to the right, you can see the project file tree and a list of layers and objects.
So are we just clicking on the create project and then we're moving on to the next one?
Yep. So if you were on the previous page where you were typing in the name for your project, just hit create project and you should end up on the screen that I'm on right now.
No, I meant like, do we need to adjust anything?
Nope, you don't need to.
So I just like write the name of my project and then hit create and nice open up to this.
Yep, exactly. Bingo.
I'm in. We're good.
That's great. Alrighty, so the first thing that we need to create this game is Bill Gates, right? Otherwise, how are we going to have him jump over the chair? So in order to create a new character for our game, I'm going to double click somewhere within this dotted box. So I'm just going to double click right here. And then you'll see this menu pop up here. Once you see this menu, we need to choose what type of object do we want to add to our game. In our case, we want to add a new game character, so we want to add something called a sprite. It's spelled just like the soda. So type in Sprite in the search bar, and once you see this icon pop up, double click on it, and you'll see that your mouse has changed to a plus sign. Once that happens, click anywhere within the dotted line box, and you should see a paint screen pop up. I'll pause here for a quick second to let everyone catch up. We have a question in chat from Molly. What do we click on? Yeah, great question. So just to start again in the process, in case you need me to, let me delete this quickly. So go ahead and double click anywhere within the dotted line box on the screen. After that, type in Sprite into the search bar. It is spelled just like the soda. Then double click on this. You'll see that your mouse is turned into this plus sign. Click again somewhere inside the dotted line box, and you'll see a paint screen pop up. Alrighty, once everyone's here, now we can draw our Bill Gates character. I'm not that good at art, so I'm just going to draw a stick figure, but if you want to draw a really nice character, feel free to. Let's go ahead and draw Bill Gates.
Mine is not working, like it's not letting me draw.
Okay, if it's not letting you draw, make sure you selected one of the drawing tools to the left. Right now I have the pen selected, I believe.
Oh, okay, now I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We have a question in chat. Can you change the thickness? Yes, you can. I believe if you adjust this slider right here that I'm playing with right now, the lower you go, the less thick it will be. Alrighty, so once you have your character drawn, there's one more thing we need to do before we're finished here. We need to make sure that we shrink the box around the character so that it fits it perfectly. Otherwise, the character is going to be too big on our screen. So in order to do that, we're going to click the crop button. It's the one right up here that has, looks like a box almost. Go ahead and click on this.
Is there a way where we can increase how our character looks like? Because right now mine looks so tiny.
Yeah, so if you want to, just click crop, and then once you go back to the world map screen, I'll show you how to increase the size of your character.
Well, I'm trying to draw, but it keeps dragging the screen when I try and do anything.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm trying to draw, but it drags the screen when I try and do anything.
It drags the screen as you're trying to do something. Gotcha. I've never had that issue before, so I'm not sure what's going on. I would say double check to make sure you do have the pencil icon or the pen icon selected. You might have the grab tool selected.
Yeah, it's the pencil icon. Like it draws, but it like drags it and makes it go in the opposite direction.
Gotcha. Unfortunately, I don't know how to fix that problem right now. But if you can shoot me a message right after this workshop, I'll work with you to figure it out.
Can I share my screen so that you can see what I'm having trouble with right now?
Let me see. Yeah, sure. We can do that really quickly, but we can't stay here for too long. Feel free to go ahead.
Okay. So as you can see, mine is like really tiny, but I was trying to make it like the ones that you did in the example, but I didn't know how.
I cannot see your screen. I think that might be because I'm on split screen mode. Let me switch over. Gotcha, I see. Okay. And that's a little bit too small for you, right? Is that why?
Yeah, even smaller than what you have.
Gotcha. No, that's totally fine. Don't worry. Leave it as this, and once we move on to the world map, I will show you how to make it bigger.
Okay.
Awesome. Let me pin my screen back to the top. And let's keep on going. So once you've clicked the crop button, you can now see that the box around the character has shrunk to fit it pretty tightly. And now go ahead and click the X in the top right because we're finished here for now. And there we go. Now we have Bill Gates in our game.
Hey, we're not saving anything.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh no, we're not saving anything. We just press X.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
So we're not saving anything. We just press the X.
Yeah, just press X. It will automatically save the character for you.
Okay.
Awesome. And then to answer someone's question from earlier, if your character is too big or small, just click on it. And do you see these corner boxes? Just click on one of them and drag. And you can make them smaller, bigger, thicker, thinner, however you like.
You're not sharing your screen.
I think I am, but you might need to pin
shared.
the video on Google Meet.
Also, the first time when I tried to do the sprite thing, like when I pressed the sprite button, like it made that entire white box, it made it like a rectangle, like a small rectangle on the left of my screen.
Gotcha. I don't know exactly what that issue is, but let me know after the workshop and I can definitely walk through it with you. And before I move on, just want to double check, can everyone see my screen? If not, speak up now. Otherwise, hold your peace forever. All right, I do see a couple of nodes in the chat. Let me triple check to make sure I am sharing my screen. I am. So if you can't see my screen, again, make sure you pin my presentation in Google Meet, and that should fix the problem for you. All righty, let's keep on going. So now that we have Bill Gates, there are two more characters that we need to add to our game. First of all, we need a chair, right? Otherwise, what is Bill Gates going to jump over? So we're going to create another sprite. This is the exact same process that we did earlier. Double click anywhere within this box. After that, type in Sprite into the search bar. Double click on that. Your mouse turns into this plus sign. Click anywhere within the box. And we're back to the paint screen. So this time, I'm going to change the color up. Let's pick a green. And I'm just going to draw a really basic chair. As you can tell, I'm not an artist. So with that, before we hit X, don't forget to hit the crop button so that the box automatically shrinks itself. And just like that, we have our chair done. Hit X, and we are back to the world map. Alrighty, last but not least, we still need one more character. And in this case, it will be the floor. Otherwise, Bill Gates and the chair won't really have anything to stand on. So in order to do that, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to double click anywhere within the box, type in Sprite, double click on that, press in the box again, and we're back to the paint screen. For the floor, I think I'm just going to pick a black color and then draw a straight line on the floor. And again, don't forget, the most important part is to hit the crop button before you save. All right, I'm back to the world map, and I'm going to stretch out my floor just so that it covers the entire world map. All right, once we have this, we'll move on to the next steps. I will pause here for a quick second so that everyone can catch up and ask any questions if they have some.
I have a question.
Wait, can you go back and show how you did that?
Yeah, whoever went first, can you ask your question again?
Oh, so I was trying to draw the line, but the thing is, so you see how your square's a lot bigger when you like paint it, but like mine just appears to be tiny, and when I try to zoom it, it only covers a little bit. It doesn't cover, like the whole thing.
Gotcha. Are you on an iPad by chance?
No, I'm on my Chromebook.
Okay. Let me see. I don't know why that would be happening. Try zooming out or in if it's a touchscreen. If that still doesn't work, just let me know after the workshop and I will be glad to help you with that.
I think the sprite with my floor got deleted. Do you know how that would have happened?
Sorry, could you say that again?
I think the sprite with my floor got deleted. Do you know how that could have happened?
Yeah, you can try hitting the undo button. Up here is the arrow that's pointing to the left. Or if you want to, you can just recreate the floor as a sprite. Shouldn't take too long.
All right. I don't see it anywhere.
Okay, no worries. So just double click anywhere in the screen and walk through the process of creating a sprite again.
Also, is there like I'm using like a drawing tablet, and for some reason like it just doesn't seem to be working well with this website.
Yeah, so I personally don't have a drawing tablet, so I'm not exactly sure how to help you with that. But if you want to ask me more about that, just shoot me a message right after the workshop, and we can figure that out. We have a question in chat. Can you please show how did you draw the line? Yeah, sure thing. I could do that again. So I'm going to double click anywhere within this box again, right? And then we see this menu screen pop up. We want to add a sprite to the screen. So we're going to type that into the search bar. We're going to double click on this icon, hit the plus sign. And then once we're here, make sure you have the pen icon selected. Pick any color you want. And then I'm just going to draw a straight line on the floor here. And once you do that, hit crop, and you can hit the X. I'm going to go ahead and delete the second floor. Actually, you know what? I'll keep it here. You can use this for some fun afterwards. Alrighty, let's move on. So if we want to try out our game right now, we're going to go ahead and hit the play button right here. And this will pop up a window with our game so far. I'm going to just go ahead and try using the arrow keys to play the game, and nothing's happening. It's just a picture on my screen.
Where's the
This means that, oh yeah, go ahead.
Where's the play button?
Yeah, the play button is right up here. It's next to that red button that says buy now.
Oh, never mind, I see it.
Awesome. So back to our game. Right now, nothing's happening when I'm pressing the arrow keys. This isn't really a game, it's more of an image, right? So in order to fix this, we need to add some behaviors to our sprites. How do we do that? Well, let's start off with Bill Gates. I want to make sure I can control him with my arrow keys, right? Just like any other video game. In order to do that, click on the character. And you should see a menu to the left that includes an option called Add Behaviors. Go ahead and click on that Behaviors link. And then click Add New Behavior. And what this is going to do is that now we can select
I'm
any
really
of these
sorry.
behaviors
Could
to
you-
add to our sprite. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Could you please show from the start again? I missed a bit.
From start for adding a behavior?
Yes.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me quickly exit out of here. All right, so again, to add a behavior, click on the character that you want to add the behavior to. In this case, I want to add it to Bill Gates, so I'm going to click on him. After that, I'm going to look at the menu to the left. Click on this link called Behaviors. After that, click Add New Behavior. And we're back to this menu. Alrighty, so what behavior do we want to add? Well, in Construct, in order to allow us to control the character with our arrow keys, we want to add a behavior called platform. So go and type platform in the search bar, and it's this one right here. So I'm going to double click on it. And just like that, we added the platform behavior to our character. Now, before we move on, we also want to add another behavior to Bill Gates. In most video games, when we move the character around on the screen, the camera moves with him or her, right? So in order to do that, we're going to add another behavior. Click Add New Behavior here. And then type in Scroll To. And what this will do is that whenever we move Bill Gates on the screen, the camera will automatically follow them. Alrighty, once we've done that, let's hit X and then give our game a try. Uh-oh. I think Bill Gates dropped off of the face of the earth in my game. That's not good. If I press the arrow keys, I think we lost Bill Gates. That's pretty sad. We need to fix this. So in order to do that, we're going to add even more behaviors. Let's go back to the behaviors menu. So what do we need to do? Well, Bill Gates currently just falls out of the floor. So we should probably make the floor solid, right? In order to do that, let's click on the floor. After that, click on Behaviors just like what we did for Bill Gates. Add new behavior. And this time we want to add the behavior called solid. Go ahead and double click on that. And we're all set here. Hit X. And the floor is now solid. I'm going to go through and do the exact same thing for all of our characters on the screen. Let's do it for Bill Gates now. Behaviors, add new behavior, double click solid, and then hit the X. I'm going to do the same thing for the chair now. Behaviors, add new behavior, and solid. And then since I have an extra floor up here, I guess I'll do that for this one too. Great. Before I hit play for the game, I'm going to pause for a quick second and I'll let everyone catch up and ask any questions if you have any.
How do we make like, a spears or diamonds type of shapes?
Spheres or diamonds? That's a great question. I think if you go back to the sprite creation screen and enter the paint editor, there should be an option to create certain shapes such as circles, and then you can go from there.
Because I only see options like rectangle, square, circle, and then a line. So I was just-
Gotcha. Yeah, let me take a look actually. We can try that out right now. So in the paint editor, let's see. You're right. So we do have options for a line, a rectangle, or a circle. If you want to create custom shapes, you can just use the pen tool and freestyle it yourself, I think.
Would it be perfect?
It wouldn't be perfect, but you can also upload your own images either from the internet or ones that you have by yourself.
So is it the page plus one where we insert the image and then just like modify it?
Yeah, I believe so. If you click this button right here, the one that looks like a folder, load image from a file, this will let you upload a file.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. There's a couple questions in chat. Let's go through those quickly. First up, what are the behaviors that you use for the characters? That's a great question. For Bill Gates, we use behaviors platform, scroll to, and solid. Just to walk through each one, platform is the one that allows us to use the arrow keys to control Bill Gates. Scroll to is the one that allows us to move the camera to follow him. And then solid makes sure that he doesn't fall through the floor.
Just like a quick comment. When I run the one that we just did, like we did the camera and then we did the platform and then we did the solid for the character, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we do that, the character just stays still, like he's not moving or doing anything. He just stays still, like platform.
Gotcha. We'll walk through that in a quick second when we try it out.
My Bill Gates like goes up when I press the play button. Like it's like on that screen, it's on the ground, but when I press the play button and it loads, he's like higher than he's supposed to be.
He's higher than he's supposed to be. Gotcha. Are you sure that Bill Gates is starting on the floor?
Yeah.
Gotcha. I think you might have accidentally changed the gravity value, perhaps. We can walk through that after workshop. Just shoot me a message.
I think the issue is that we didn't add physics behavior yet. So it just remains on the starting position.
Yeah, that's a good comment. The cool thing about
His starting
Construct, though, is
position
that you don't need to add physics behaviors. It automatically adds it for all of your characters once you add these behaviors.
Can I share my screen to show you like what's happening?
Can we do that after the workshop? Because we are starting to go a little bit over time, and I want to make sure everyone can leave if they need to on time. Let's see. I'm going to answer one more question from chat, and then we'll move on. When I hit play, it opens to the full page of the browser, not full screen mode, and it doesn't let me go back to the editor. How could I remedy this? Yeah, great question. So if this is not full screen, first try hidden escape. If that doesn't work, you should just be able to close the window or close the tab because it should open up a brand new window for the game. And then one more comment from chat. I see someone said, my Bill Gates is not strong enough to jump over my chair. Don't worry about that. We're actually going to go over that in a quick second. Alrighty, let's move on. So let's test out this game that we have right now. If I hit play and I use the arrow keys to control Bill Gates, I can see that he can move on the screen. I can make him jump, and let's jump over this chair. Awesome. All right, so this isn't that bad of a game. This is a pretty good start, but we can make this even better. So let's walk through that.
Wait, how did he jump?
How did he jump? Right now, I'm just using the arrow keys on my keyboard, left, up, and right.
They don't do anything for me when I try and like press them. They don't do anything.
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Like they don't do anything for Bill Gates when I move them. When I press the arrow keys, nothing happens to Bill Gates.
Yes,
Gotcha. So
either.
you might not have the platform behavior added to Bill Gates. And I can walk through that really quickly again.
No,
if we click on Bill Gates. Oh yeah, go ahead.
We have the platform on, but like it's not working even though we have it on.
Gotcha. Okay, so in that case, try the WASD keys. And if that still doesn't work, just shoot me a message after the workshop and I will make sure to help you out. And someone said in chat, if the character is stuck, it might be because the floor is touching the character. That's a really good point. Make sure your character is not stuck within the floor, kind of like this. Just drag them up so that they're above the floor. Alrighty, so let's keep on making this game awesome. Now we're going to add a event, and what we're going to do is that whenever Bill Gates fails to jump over the chair, so if he crashes into the chair or touches it, we want the game to restart. In order to do that, we're going to go to the event sheet, and in order to do that, we just click on the event sheet at the top right here. Once you click that, click Add Event. And then I'm going to pause here for a quick second for everyone to catch up. I'll also answer a really quick question from the chat. How do I crop the hitbox of my objects? So in order to do that, go back to the Sprite editor screen. That's the one where you can paint your object. And then hit the crop button. It's at the top, and it looks like a box. Alrighty, so what event do we want to add? Well, like I said earlier, I want something to happen when Bill Gates touches the chair. So I'm going to double click on Bill Gates. And then I'm going to scroll down and double click on collision with another object. After that, I'm going to choose an object to detect. And like I said earlier, we want something to happen when Bill Gates collides with the chair. So I'm going to click here and select the chair. All right, once we have that, let's hit done. And now we're going to add an action for our event. In order to do that, let's click Add Action. Then let's double click on System. And then type in Restart. Click on the option that shows up. And what this will do is that whenever Bill Gates, right here, collides with the chair, right here, the system will restart the game. Alrighty, let's give this a try. I'm going to go back to the start page, not start page, the layout. So I'm going to click Layout 1 at the top. And then I'm going to press play. Now, whenever I jump over the chair, if I miss the jump, the game restarts. So let me just run headfirst into the chair. Ouch. And just like that, the game restarts.
Mine doesn't do that.
Gotcha. I would love to walk through that, but I was just told that we do have only a few minutes left before the next workshop starts. So I want to make sure that we can finish this really quickly. I will stick around after the workshop, though, so you can ask me questions.
So they post a link.
Alrighty. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
They post a link to the next workshop in the chat, or I mean the Discord.
Yeah, they'll put it in the Discord. I can also put it in the chat for you once we finish here.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to quickly wrap this up, someone earlier said that their Bill Gates is too small to jump over the chair, right? So what you can do, and this is really cool, just click on Bill Gates and then hit the checkbox next to double jump. And once you do that and hit play, if I press the up key twice, I can make Bill Gates double jump, just like that. All right, and just with that, unfortunately, I am going to start to wrap up the workshop here. This basically is a really basic overview of Construct. It's super easy to use, and it's a lot of fun. You could explore a lot of things within Construct. So for example, if I click on Bill Gates, try changing these numbers next to gravity and jump strength. I think you'll have a lot of fun with that. And with that, thank you so much for coming to today's workshop on Intro to Construct. I hope you guys had a good time. If you have any questions, I'll stick around in this room to answer any questions afterwards. And if you want to go to the next workshop, let me go ahead and pull up a link to that.
How did you get the double jump?
Yeah,
the first workshop ran over, and I'm sure everyone probably needed a break after it. So just give it a few minutes and we'll get started. So yeah, this workshop is going to be more focused on animations for websites, but I think you could use some of the knowledge you'll gain from this for Minecraft mods as well. Though, from my experience, those have been done more with Java as opposed to JavaScript. But yeah, I think you could gain some valuable knowledge, either way from this. I also probably should go and do a mic check so everyone can hear me. Cool. So let's see if I can move the call settings over real quick. It's not going to move those. Okay, that'll be fine. Yeah, we'll go and get started. So welcome everyone. This workshop is going to be making your website pop with JavaScript animations. I'm Aaron Hampson. And just to give a quick background about myself, I've been programming for about 15 years now. I started back in the 8th grade for a science fair project. And I got into game modding, and it just kind of went from there. And then, almost 15 years later, I've been through a couple companies. I started my career at State Farm. I moved to Blue Yonder. After COVID struck, my position there was cut. So I ventured over to T-Mobile, where I currently reside. So yeah, I've got a fair bit of industry experience. And at the end of this workshop, I plan to block some time off for an open Q&A, just to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions, both about the workshop and just kind of the industry and and such. So a quick overview of what the workshop is going to look like in terms of structure. I'm going to go through just a quick overview of JavaScript. Some in here may already be familiar with it to varying degrees, but I'm also going to assume that others are not. Then we'll go through the project, and then, as I mentioned, an open Q&A. I have a few additional resources that I found useful as a developer, doing a lot of work with JavaScript myself that I think are useful to share. And then just a quick closing statement. So to jump right in, what is JavaScript? It's a widely used scripting language. It was originally created by Brendan Eich, who is the co-founder of, as shown here, many parts of Mozilla, who is the organization behind what is now Firefox. And despite what many think, JavaScript is actually unrelated to the Java programming language. It has a similar name, but they're not related. So where can one find JavaScript in action? if you use most any website on the internet, you're going to find JavaScript working behind the scenes in some capacity. Whether it's letting you know that you need to enter an email in the correct format, loading images or files, animations, which is going to be the topic of today's session. And more recently, it has become more prevalent on the server side as well. And many large companies use a popular runtime called Node.js to handle operations on the server side. And just an interesting piece of history that I wanted to call some attention to. So it was 25 years ago today that JavaScript was first announced publicly as a joint venture by Netscape and what was then Sun Microsystems, which is now Oracle. So just a cool piece of history that JavaScript turned 25 today, which is why it's a couple years younger than me. So let's go over today's project. What we're going to look to make by the end of this workshop is a simple block breaker game. And what I'm going to strive to do is point out opportunities for personalization. Originally, I had designed an app, I guess I'd call it, that I was going to use as part of this workshop, where it would take everyone on a kind of guided journey, and they'd have a personalized game at the end of it, but it just ended up being a little bit too much work, so I kind of pared it back a little bit. Over there. Yeah, so we're going to build this with plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We're not going to be using any special frameworks or plugins or anything. This is something that we'll be able to build using just Notepad. Yeah, so with that, let's go into the initial setup for this. And just to show as well, a little more than just a still picture, this will be the finished product in some capacity. And then eventually, you break all the bricks, or miss enough times that it'll be game over. So yeah, so that's what we're going to be building today. And then to answer the quick question I saw pop up about can you code a website in JavaScript? You can, but you're going to also need you need HTML at least at a minimum to effectively code a website. So you definitely could code one with just JavaScript, but it wouldn't be fun to navigate. So what we'll do first, so I'm going to minimize this stuff. What I have, I created a folder on my desktop just to kind of house these files. So if everyone wants to follow along, this will be a pretty easy process. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the folder. And yours probably won't have the .idea folder. That's just the development tool I use when I create this folder. But what we're going to do is I don't know what. Okay. So what we're going to first do, we're going to need a folder created. So I'll go ahead and start that step, I guess. So for Windows machines, just right click new and do folder. And I'm going to call it CodeDay. For a Chromebook, it should be the same. You should be able to right click and there should be a new option depending on the operating system to create a new folder. Okay, so not having a folder, that'll be fine. So let's try the next step. So I guess real quick, let's see. So we won't be going to any websites. For a MacBook, yeah, you'll just have to use the let's see. Try to remember the Mac editor. You'll just have notes. If you have Atom or Sublime, or any text editor really, you can use Notepad. Yeah, if you have Visual Studio Code, VS Code would definitely work. Yeah, it won't have to be a specific text editor. No. It's just one you'll need to be able to save a file at the end of it. Let me do a quick search for the Chromebook question. Okay, yeah, so we're going to create a folder, and then what you can do is using your favorite text editor, whether that's Notepad on Windows, Visual Studio Code, Sublime, Atom. There's a whole host of text editors. Personally, I'm going to use IntelliJ. This is just what I know. It's my go-to editing tool, but this will be no different than using Notepad. So what you'll do is, if you're using text editor, you'll create a new file. And you'll have probably have a blank file. So what you want to do is just immediately do a file save as and name it index.html. So I'll give everyone a second to make that file. Yeah, so with our index.html file, so just create that file in your text editor and saved it off to the folder you made. What we'll then do is just enter a little bit of simple HTML. So we'll first specify the doc type is HTML. We'll create the opening and closing HTML tag, just like that. We'll create a head for this file. And within the head, we'll add a title. And we can just put anything into that tag. So then once we have that, we're going to create one of the most important components of making this animation come to life, and that's going to be the canvas. So in terms of those that are, finding themselves unable to follow along due to the text editor issue or other things, I am going to be posting the GitHub link at the end of my slides, and the slides on Discord, so everyone has access to those. So if you're not able to follow along, if you just want to kind of observe, come along for the ride and the knowledge of it, then I think that's probably the best idea for the moment. And then as to the question about script tags, we will be using script tags in a couple minutes. Yep. So we create a canvas. We'll give it an ID. And this is going to be important for when we start writing the JavaScript. We're going to need to reference this idea later. So I'm just going to call it canvas because that's just easy. And then we'll also have to specify a width tag or width property. This is what I used for the width. And the height. And then the one thing I realized I forgot, we have to put a opening and closing body tag. So I'll give everyone a second just to make sure that they've got that so far. And then what we're going to need to do is create another file. So again, in a text editor or your IDE like VS Code, go and create a new file and just do a file save as, and we're going to name this one styles.css. And this is where we're going to put all of our styling for this project. And we're just going to need to add a simple bit of styling at first for the canvas, because it by default is transparent. And we want to make sure that we can see it when we load the page and test it. So we're going to give it a background property. And here's another point where you can customize it. I'm probably just going to give it a simple whitish gray. But you can make that background any color that you want to. And then we just need to add a display property. So in terms of seeing the colors, so it's not supported by the community IntelliJ. It says you need the ultimate version. Okay. So for seeing the colors, you can use just like the the normal word for color. You don't have to use the hex code, which is what starts with a pound sign. So if CSS isn't supported by community, I thought community did. Okay, well, so here's a lesson on software development. Be adaptable. So we're going to ignore the styles.css file, and we're going to put the style in the header, or in the head tag, not the header. So we'll go and create a style tag, and then we'll just put the styling in here, and we'll have it running in the same file. And we also want to add a margin property to it, which will center the canvas on the screen. Okay. So what we'll be able to do now is if you've got the index file, index.html file created, go ahead and save it. And then what we're going to do then, and this should be the same on Windows or Mac, we're going to find where you save the index.html file, click on it, and then just hit enter. Yeah, in terms of sharing out the code written, I'll definitely look into another way for sharing it besides GitHub for those that don't have GitHub accounts. I think you can view it without having a GitHub account because I did make it a public project. So I don't think you'll need a GitHub account to view it. But yeah, I will double check and make sure that it's as accessible as I can make it. So we'll click on index, hit enter, and open it. Okay. And this is what you should see so far. And the gray block is the canvas. If you entered a different color, then your block would be, the color that you entered. So is there anyone so far that has their canvas showing up in a web browser window? It doesn't work on Mac. I mean, it should, because I do my main day job development on a Mac. So I guess the steps are just a bit different. Yeah, so I'll go back to the HTML code real quick and give everyone a chance to catch up. Yeah, so if it's showing up blank, odds are it's with the styling, or the index.html file was not saved. Okay. Yeah, so if you're on a Mac, you should just be able to right click on the file and hit open with, and then choose either Google Chrome or Safari or Firefox, depending upon the web browser that you use. For increasing the size of the canvas, you can increase it. The way I wrote, sorry, the way I wrote out the settings, the 480 by 320 is what it should be right now. There's some odd behavior when you mess with the settings for the sizing. But it's definitely something you can play around with. So we'll go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes of this workshop, which is the JavaScript. And again, if you're able to follow along, that'll be great. If not, I'm still going to try and explain things in a way that, hopefully you'll be able to take some information about JavaScript. Text editor for Mac, VS Code probably would be the one I'd recommend. It's free, so that yeah, I can copy and paste. Actually, that's what I'll do to make this easy for everyone. I'll copy and paste the HTML. I'll put at least that. And then we'll figure out a solution for the JavaScript as this goes on. Because if the screen is too small, let me make my font just a slight bit bigger. There. That should be a little bit more readable. Okay. So what we're going to do, and again, just to avoid issues with the editors, we're going to do this in a single file, which this isn't the best practice. Definitely you should have a separate HTML, a separate CSS, a separate JavaScript file. But we're going to adapt this on the fly. So what we're going to then do is create the script tag. Let's see the code I copy and pasted. Oh. I sent that. There we go. Okay, so there's the HTML. That should have gone to all attendees now. And that's where we're at so far. For VS Code, I don't believe need any extensions for JavaScript. I think it has JavaScript support out of the box. Yeah. So it does. Okay. Yeah. What we're then going to do is begin writing our JavaScript. So the first thing we're going to need to do is create a canvas object in JavaScript. And you can do that by the keyword let, which is JavaScript's way of identifying a variable. And I'm going to name it canvas because this will be an object that refers to this canvas that's on the HTML. And the way you fetch the canvas is by calling document and then get element by ID, and then the ID of the canvas. So that's what we're going to use to get the instance of the canvas we created. And then alongside the canvas, we also need a context. And that's going to be used, I'd say the way I describe a context is like a paintbrush. You're going to have a paintbrush to paint on the canvas. So we're going to get a 2D context because we're going to be drawing in a 2D space here. Yeah, if we want to do anything with 3-dimensional work, then there's that option as well. But for the sake of this, we're going to keep it 2-dimensional. And then now that we have that, that's what we need to begin drawing the elements that will make up the pieces of the game. So the first thing you need to do is invoke context.beginPath. I would say think of this as putting your paintbrush to the canvas or your pencil to a piece of paper to begin drawing. So this tells it to begin. And then what we're going to do is just to test that the canvas works, we're going to call the rect function, which stands for rectangle. And then it's going to need 4 values. So it'll need that we will give it. And what these values are the beginning X coordinate on the canvas and the beginning Y coordinate, and then the width and the height of the rectangle. So then the next thing we'll have to do with that is decide what color we're going to make it. And you specify that by using fill style. And here's another place where you can customize it some. You can put in any color that you want. So I'm just gonna do orange, but you can do red, yellow, blue. It'll take in any hex code. So anything that you all choose for the color for that. And then you'll need to give the fill command. And then finally, you'll need to close the path. So once you have these 5 lines, what that'll do is begin drawing. It'll draw a rectangle. It'll fill it with your color, or you specify your color, then it fills it, and then it closes the path, which would be picking up your pencil or picking up the paintbrush from the canvas. So once you get to this point, you should again be able to run the file that you created. So on Windows, you can double click or just click and enter. On Mac, you can right click your index file and hit open with, and then like Chrome or Safari. So you should see something like this. Once you get that step completed, you'll have the canvas and you'll have the block drawn. Yeah, so let canvas and let context. I'm gonna put this in the chat again. So everyone's got it. Yeah, what let canvas and let context do is create the definition that you'll use to refer to the canvas on the HTML. So these act as sort of a bridge between your JavaScript and your HTML. But these are what's needed to perform the JavaScript methods on, on the HTML elements. So has anyone successfully gotten a square of the color of their choice to show up? Okay, so we got a couple. Good. And again, those that are having some issues with it, if yours wasn't the color you chose, or if it's black, you'll want to double check the fill style. If it's just a white screen, also double check that you have the style correct, because if this isn't specified, the canvas won't show up. And then make sure that your ID matches here. So there's a couple places that, they're kind of potential pitfalls. Yeah, it works. So what was the issue that you had to need the canvas to know the let code is working properly in my IntelliJ project? Huh. Yeah, because I'm using IntelliJ also, though I'm using the Ultimate Edition, and the Community Edition does have a different set of plugins and languages that it supports. Yeah. So again, with all these, I think following along for right now. Yeah. So let's go ahead and you'll be able to see the rectangle. You won't be able to see the canvas if you don't give it the style. This is needed for the canvas to show up. And then the fill style is important for the shape. So what we're going to do to go ahead and make if you want to use an image as the background of a canvas, there's other ways to do that. Canvas probably wouldn't be the best choice for that. You'd want to use Canvas for when you're drawing elements like this, and when you're kind of animating things. But you could use the source element and then apply the link to the image, and then you could use some CSS to display it that way. So yeah, so we got the square. So let's go ahead and draw the ball. So let's go and delete the square real quick. So we're going to switch from a square to a ball, or a circle. Let's see. We need to do an arc, which is, yeah, they call it to make a circle, you have to use a function called arc instead of something called circle. So it's a little bit unintuitive. So it's one, definitely take note of. And then, let's see, what values should we use? So we'll give it that. And then it needs the end angle. So we'll give it the pi function. Okay. And then we have to give it a fill style again. Like that. Okay. So in doing that step, what we're going to do, so we replaced the square with a circle. Yeah, and this is what defines the circle, which arc makes sense to me why they named it that, but at the same time, calling it circle would have been a lot more user-friendly in my opinion. But yeah, we'll use that to create the circle. Give it the fill color, fill it, close the path. Yeah, I think you could create an ellipse using arc. Yeah, the CSS is right up here. It's in the style tag up at the top. Yeah, I had to inline the CSS. So it's all there. Yeah, and the JS. Yep. So I'll go ahead and again drop the code there so far for what we got. And then again, same procedure. And then now you'll see a circle instead of a square. Yeah, so the values inside the arc function, like creating a rectangle, you have the x and the y coordinates. If the color is wrong, it's likely going to depend on what you entered in fill style. And then you have the radius of the circle, which the radius is the like the width from one end of the circle to the other. So that's, in easy terms, that's the size of the circle. And then you have the start angle, end angle. The dimensions of the arc in pixels. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure the dimensions offhand. It's a radius. The radius of the circle is 10 pixels, and then what is it? 2 pi r. It's like a circumference of like 60, I think, off the top of my head. Yeah, there was no inline CSS. Let's see, and then for giving it like a hash value, yeah, instead of orange, yeah, 0, 0 would be the top left corner. Yep. So if you want to give the color hash value instead, you can use just hashtag, EEE, or any of those. I'm just using the the plain text. The names to make it easy. Yeah. Again, I'm gonna keep I'll keep posting the code as I go. So I posted that. So we've got a ball now. Then we're gonna need to make the ball move. So what we'll want to do first is figure out where the initial starting point of the ball is going to be. So we can do that by creating 2 more variables, one to represent x, and one to equal y, or to represent y. We'll start x at, I guess probably the middle of the canvas is good. So we'll do canvas.width, and then we'll divide that by 2. So that will put the ball in the center of the canvas along the width. Then what we'll do is take the height of the canvas and let's put it like 35 pixels. And that will go to the maximum height of the canvas. And then just subtract 35 pixels from that and place the canvas there. So now we've got our x and y. One of the things that we should do then is replace the 50 in the arc function, the first one, with the x, and replace the second one with y. So what we're doing there is taking our values and putting them into variables that we can manipulate before we pass them into different function calls, as we'll later do. So what we'll also want to do is turn this into a method, or I'm sorry, not method, a function, because to animate the ball, we're going to be repeatedly drawing the circle. So to do that, we can create a function using the function keyword, and then draw a ball, and then putting the curly braces around it. So yeah, the circle will need to be redrawn for every frame to animate it, because this is the way this is done. It's a frame by frame animation. So we'll see in a second why you have to redraw it. There's definitely something I was gonna explain. Yep, it's kind of an annoying part of JavaScript animation. So we'll create this function. Yes, that's good. And then what we'll need to do then is at the bottom of this, call that method. Otherwise, if you've tried to run it after writing this, the ball probably disappeared because this method isn't getting called at all. So let's call it draw ball. So if you run it from that point, you'll see the ball. But right now, the ball is still stationary. So what we're going to need to do is develop a way to move the ball. So let's add 2 more values. And we'll call these dx and dy, which the name for these comes from calculus. So I'm not going to dive too deep into that explanation. But these will be used to specify the change in the x value and the change in the y. So this will be the motion. So what we'll do that with a value of 2. We'll do that one with a value of -2. And then what we're going to want to do is this is the part where we're actually going to create the motion by changing the x and y values using these new dx values we created. This is what's actually going to give our ball motion. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm real quick. Oh, yeah. So then what we'll have to do in order to make sure that it keeps calling that function, because right now that would only call draw ball once, we'll have to call set interval. And what you can do with this is pass in a function, and this second value is milliseconds. So when this code is run, this will draw the ball every 10 milliseconds. So it calls this. So we'll see the ball moving then. So to the earlier question about needing to redraw the circle, this is why. because every 10 milliseconds, the canvas is drawing a new circle, but it's not clearing the previous circle. So the frames are stacking on one another instead of, looking like they're actually moving. Yeah, so we're going to clear the frames as we animate them. Yep. Yeah, that's what we're going to have to do in order for it to show correctly. And we're coming up on what, 2010? So yeah, what we'll need to do before invoking each circle's drawn is clear the canvas. So we'll start at 0, 0, and then we want to clear the whole canvas. So we'll specify the width as the width of the canvas, and the height is the height of the canvas. Oh. Yeah, CTX, I would copy paste my other for my notes. So yeah, so that first one should be context again. So we'll clear the canvas and then completely redraw. The interval will run, clear the canvas, draw the ball, move, the coordinates will move, clear the canvas, so on and so forth. So I'll go ahead and put, yes, I did. That was a very good catch. I'm glad you're all paying attention. I put that in there as a test, making sure you're all paying attention. Yeah. Okay, so I'll go and drop this code in the chat there. Hopefully it'll work for everyone. What you'll see then, hopefully, you'll see the ball. And it's gonna keep going off the screen, so we'll have to set boundaries and things like that. But no, it's the spacing won't affect it like Python. It's not, it's not strict on spacing. Generally, you would have 2 spaces is the common syntax I see for JavaScript, but it can be 2 or 4, or really whatever. It doesn't. Yeah, like if I did this, it's still going to run just fine. Yeah, so if you increase the time, let's add up to 1,000 milliseconds, so 1 second. Yeah, so if you change the time, what you'll see is the ball moves a lot slower. So that's at 1 second that it calls that draw. So, conversely, let's change it to 1 millisecond. I don't know if we'll have a chance to see it. Yeah, it's off there. So we've got about 20 minutes left. I definitely did want to leave time for Q&A. So I'll kind of wrap up at least this part of it for the moment. And just kind of explain how this could be applied to your all's projects this weekend. Yeah, if the gray box isn't showing up, probably styling. Yeah, it's probably styling, depending upon what you enter for background. If the ball isn't showing up, it's likely within this. So that's some of the kind of common debugging things. But some ways that you all would be able to use this weekend for your projects. If you play around with different shapes, different colors, different sizes of things, the different interval, having multiple canvases, different CSS settings. In the GitHub I'm going to share with the completed version of this, it also shows how to take keyboard input. It'll detect when you push the left and the right keys. It has collision detection, so it'll detect when the ball hits one of the boundaries, like the wall, the edge of the canvas, things like that. So if you're looking to make a web-based game in JavaScript, that code that I'm going to share has a lot of good things I think you could kind of tear apart and take a look into. And just while I'm at it, that is not okay. Where is it? There it is. This one. So this is the project I talked about earlier, where I had said that I was working on a project prior that I was hoping to share with you all. I did a little bit differently, where I had a configuration that you'd be able to go in, and again, this code is available out there if you all want to pull pieces from it, use it, by all means, feel free to do so. So I gave you the ability to configure things like the size of the ball, the paddle, how many bricks, messages, how many lives you get, the different colors of things. So I just want to kind of give you all somewhat of a kind of a generic JavaScript toolkit to look from, and be able to hopefully draw some inspiration from, really. And kind of the last thing I want to show before I go to Q&A, another app I just again hope to give you all some ideas for this weekend. Is an app, it's the app I was working on. It's not going to run on. Oh, that's right. It's not going to work either. Yeah, you have about 15 minutes to the next workshop. Yeah, that app isn't going to run. So I'm going to go ahead and move to this. So really, gave a bit of a quick overview on JavaScript animations, and it, to be very honest about it, it was very it was scratching the surface of what JavaScript animations can do. Really was hoping there's more of a thought starter. That was kind of my goal for this whole workshop, was to help give you all ideas. So we've got about 15 minutes to the Python workshop. So I did want to open up to everyone, have just a short question answers segment. If you all have any questions about this workshop, questions about the tech industry, my experience with it so far, tools to use for like a project you're working on, questions about project, this weekend in general. You want to learn how to build a bot to snag a PS5 or an Xbox, I got you guys there. Yeah, so to change the trajectory of the ball, you're going to need to change the dx and dy values. That would change it. Then also working on adding some of the collision as well would help help you change it. So for JavaScript being utilized in design only or other ways, yeah, so JavaScript can be used for animations. It can be used for things like I mentioned, validation of a form field. So if you enter, say, a username and a password, and you log into like Facebook, that says incorrect username or password. Those kinds of error messages sometimes are done with JavaScript. And then also JavaScript's used on the server side now that that you can build back-end systems with. So you could have JavaScript interacting with databases and JavaScript, doing all kinds of crazy things. It's really a very flexible language. And it has a lot of applications. What else we got question-wise? I'll see a couple in the Q&A also. So let's see, I'll kind of bounce back and forth. So best sites to learn JavaScript. What I'm going to do, I've got some additional resources here for you all. And this is, again, just scratching the surface. I've got a whole just slew of resources I could give somebody, but I didn't want to overwhelm you all. So I just kept it to a couple really good, trusted ones. Yeah. So again, I'm going to share these slides out, and then the GitHub code as well. So that'll all be shared out. So let me switch to the Q&A stuff. Let's see. So question for the tech industry: what can a senior in high school do to prepare for a computer science degree and gain some experience in programming? Let's see. Yeah, so with that, my career path to where I got my computer science degree was starting for a science fair project, kind of like you all here with CodeDay. I see a lot of similarities with that, and just kind of being curious about it. And then I started getting more experience when people found out I knew how to code by doing freelance web development. I made some very simple websites, very simple HTML, very simple CSS, very simple JavaScript, and kind of built on that because I'm primarily a front-end engineer. So a lot of what I do is like user interface design. So it was just looking for opportunities to do things like freelancing and looking for I guess just different ways I could incorporate code into my hobbies was really another big one for me. On the side, I am also a profit costume maker, and I've incorporated electronics into some of my work with 3D printing and other things, and some of that needs coding. So finding a way to integrate your hobbies with coding, that's a great way to prepare for getting a CS degree. And you'll be ahead of the game then. But also a lot of on-the-job learning. That's gonna be another big one. Publishing an app made in HTML and JavaScript, and publishing that made in JavaScript. So there's different platforms you can use to deploy websites and then JavaScript apps. Heroku is a good one, and I'll drop that in the chat here real quick. And it's free to use, and actually would be a great application to look into for a great website or a tool, rather, to look into for working on a project this weekend. It's something I use for my personal work quite a lot, just to kind of have a playground to deploy things to and test it. It's something I would definitely recommend using. Yeah, adding zero margin to the canvas, that was used for centering. Yeah, the zero auto is used to center the canvas on the web page. That's just part of the way CSS works with that. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, does anyone have any other questions about anything? Like I said, projects or whatnot? So yeah, in conclusion, if you all have questions throughout the weekend, I'm definitely gonna be online throughout the weekend. I'm on the CodeDay Discord. That's my Discord tag there. If you all want to see the finished code, there's a link to it, and I am going to go ahead and put that in the chat right now because there's a lot more code in there and a lot more about the project. It was just a matter of pacing and the time we had. So there's definitely a lot more you can all learn there. Yes, that's the GitHub with it, and then like I alluded to, if you're looking for inspiration when it comes to working with electronics like microcontrollers, Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, 3D printing, anything like that, drop my Instagram tag there as well. Doesn't work. I copied it. Yeah, I copied it from the CodeDay Discord earlier. Huh. If you do a search without the hashtag, it might find me. But yeah, so if you all have any, questions about JavaScript or anything like that, I can definitely help. I have a wealth of knowledge on it besides animations, and definitely more than willing to share the knowledge. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks everyone for attending. Add you on LinkedIn. Yeah, definitely. If you'd like to on LinkedIn, I'm not active on LinkedIn, but yeah. Yeah, definitely appreciate everyone's time today. Yeah. Hopefully, you all have fun this weekend because that's the main thing. When it comes to coding, it can be a stressful thing at times, but just remember to get up, take 5-10 minute break, stretch, get some water. The code will be there. Just have fun with it. That's the most important thing of it. So yeah, because next presentation will be Python. That's a fun language. So hopefully y'all have fun, learn some stuff in that too. Yeah, thanks for joining everyone.
I know we got is the sound really bad? Yes. Oh no. Okay, we'll do a switcheroo. Okay, is the sound any better?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, me
Hey,
neither.
Andrew, can you hear me? I think he's trying out different headphones.
Is it any better?
Yeah, that's way better.
That's way better. That's it. I won.
Yeah, that's way better.
That's it. See, I told you guys, third time's the charm. You go from earbuds to headphones back to the earbuds, and it works perfectly. I knew it all along. Okay, let's get started before my sound breaks again. Well, we have people streaming into the waiting room. So maybe we'll give it a minute more. Oh my gosh, now we have 2 people in the waiting room. Now I know what it's like to be a teacher. Okay, hopefully that's it. Let's just get started. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. Fantastic. Okay, let's give it a go then, if it works. Okay, welcome to Python 101. This is going to be a beginner Python class for those that it's like their first time getting into programming as a whole or just Python itself. So you have experience with Scratch or another language like HTML, or you're brand new to it, this would be a perfect class for you. Basically, we're going to go over a couple different topics today. My goal of the topic is not necessarily to teach you Python, because honestly, a tutorial itself is going to do it a lot better from people that spend their entire lives making these wonderful tutorials and writing books and making things. And honestly, the best teacher is the project itself. My goal here is to get you guys a tiny bit of experience. You can get your foot in the door and then set you in the right direction so you know kind of where the path to becoming a better programmer is. Because honestly, that's the most important part, is not trying to learn the language as fast as you can, but getting on the best track. So we're going to go over a couple different things. We're going to go over why Python is generally regarded as, it's first of all, one of the most popular language, but then also the best beginner language. We're going to compare Python to other programming languages like Java and C. I'm going to go over a small Google Colab thing tutorial. We're just going to go over some variables, some data types, comparisons, and user input to kind of get your foot in the door and show you an example of a project that uses those things to actually make something cool. And then general tips to become a pro coder. And then we're going to do a Q&A. And my goal for the Q&A is that we actually have some questions. I know every other time I do a Q&A, we get to the Q&A and then no one has any questions. It's like, well, how do I know if anyone is even listening if you don't have any questions? So that'll be our goal, to get a good Q&A. If we get a good Q&A, I'll be happy. So we need to go over like why Python is special and how it's unique from other languages. So of course, there's a lot of different languages in computer science. It's kind of like learning a new language like Spanish or Korean. But Python itself is really special because it's a couple different things. It's one of the most readable languages, which means is that it looks a lot closer to regular English and you're able to actually see what's going on rather than other languages or like the most basic language, right? Which is binary, which is just zeros and ones. That's not readable at all. We have no clue what we're talking about. But Python's very high level, which means that it's pretty easy to read. And it's very similar to English. Like, for example, in a language, it actually says exactly what's going on. When you define something, it's called def, which kind of makes sense. It's very comparable to English. And it's one of the most high level languages as possible. Closer to Scratch is kind of like a good jumping point to Python. It uses white space in simple terms. And a lot of the terms actually make sense with what they mean. For example, in Java, you have stuff called like void and static. At first, that stuff doesn't make any sense. Where in Python, you kind of avoid those things and you go over things that make a little more sense. And then, as I said before, high level language, which enables you to quickly develop programming concepts and develop projects. One of the most important things about Python and why I like it so much is that you're able to do impressive things quickly. Where if you compare that to a language like Java or C or something like that, it's going to take you a long time to really make something that you can like start using right away and is actually beneficial for you, like in a real world application. Python's great because you can use it right away to do simple things such as web scrapers or things for servers, and it allows you to get hands-on experience very quickly. Now we're going to compare Python to the other languages using a classic example of Hello World, which is kind of like the starting point for everyone's journey within computer science. And as we can see with Python, we have one line. It says print, we have some quotation marks, and then it says Hello World. And that's it. And when you run that code, you'll see the output down here as Hello World. Whereas you compare that to Java, there's a lot more things that need to be done just to print out a simple message. You need to define the class that it's in, you need to define all the modifiers, and then finally print the message. And in comparison, what this tells us is that, first of all, Python makes a lot more sense. As we can see, everyone kind of knows what print means. We've all printed something before, and it makes sense. Whereas in Java, system out, print line, it's a little more advanced. So this is why Python is such a good starting point, and I think you will all enjoy it very much. And then the extreme example, this is like one of the ultimate low levels. So we have the low level, which is what this is, and we have high level, the ultimate high level being something like Scratch. Python's up here, which is good. This is assembly. So as we can say, this prints Hello World. You get the exact same result as Python, but it takes all of this just to print Hello World because it's got to configure all the memory. And this is why Python is so good for beginners. So we're going to go right into going over the kind of tutorial aspect, and we're going to go over a couple of simple things using this thing called Google Colab. So I'm going to put this link into the chat for the Colab, and then the idea is that you guys are going to make a copy. So you'll actually be able to edit yourself and be able to start coding right away. So if I go into chat, see, it's kind of nerve-wracking how you have the person that's teaching you how to code not know how to use chat on Zoom. That's kind of scary. We'll stop the share. We'll plug it into chat. Boom. Oh, that's private. Boom. Okay, there you go. So can everyone click on that and then make a copy of that by going to File, and then you are going to press Save a Copy in Drive. I'm going to hope that everyone has a Google Drive. If not, then you can follow along with me. But make sure you make a copy or else you won't be able to do any editing. And please let me know if there's any problems with that. If not, we'll be good to go and we'll move on to that section. I missed what you said. So basically you're going to click on that link and then make a copy of it. And then we're going to do some direct practice within there. Yes, it's very similar to Jupyter Notebooks. To create a copy, yes, I can. We'll go share screen, screen 2. So here we go. We have the Python thing. We're going to select File. and then you're going to make a copy in Drive, and that will copy it to your Google Drive. Don't worry about GitHub or any of this stuff. Just save a copy within Drive. And that will download it to your Google Drive, and then you'll be good to go from there. Yeah, it's almost exactly like Jupyter Notebooks. It is pretty much the exact same thing, which makes it very fun. Okay, so I'm hoping we're all good there. We're now going to move into actually working through that. So this is, it's kind of like a notebook, Jupyter Notebook, but that's something else. Basically, you have text. I'm going to hope that you guys are all able to see the text. And then we're going to have variables. And then we're going to have the actual code itself. So we'll be going through that. So basically, as long as everyone has this up, we'll be good to go. And please make a copy. Or else you won't be able to do anything, which will be sad. Very sad. Okay. Hopefully we're all good to go. We are going to move on to variables. And variables is one of the most important things within computer science. Over your hopeful career within computer science, you are going to make millions of these things. And why variables are so important is that it allows our computer to actually save our data, which is very important. And you need to be able to save this data so you can, one, access it later and use it in other places and modify it. So if we have variables within Python, we can think of them as like boxes, right? So we put the value, right, which is say, so we have a ball, right? We want to put a ball in the box. The variable itself is the box, and then the ball would be the actual object that we're putting within the box. In Python, unlike in some other languages, you do not have to specify what type of data you want. So Python is really cool in that it will automatically figure out what kind of type it is. And these are the individual types within computer science. One of the most cool things about computer science is that you can easily take the concepts that you learn from something else, such as Python, and directly apply to other languages. So obviously, if you learn English and then you go to Spanish, obviously you're going to have some idea of how English works, and it's going to be a little bit easier than learning English for the first time. And this same exact concept applies, and you'll see these things pop up in every other language that you're going to end up working with. So here's an example of some variables. So we have a name, and that name is going to be equal to Andrew. That would be referred to as a string, and a string is just something, basically it's just a sequence of characters. It's used to store, whenever you want to store like text, and strings are really cool because they're actually made up of these individual letters, and you can do a lot of cool things within these individual letters. So anytime you want to store text, you're going to have to use a string. You also have these things called integers, and this is probably the data type that you're going to be using the most. And in this example, we have number of people, and we're going to set that equal to 3. So obviously this is pretty simple. We have the number of people and we have 3. So the box itself is this variable, and then you have 3. And as you can see, this equal sign assigns this value to this variable, and that will be called an integer. You might have heard that in math. That's pretty much all the numbers, all whole numbers. So obviously you'd have 3 or 4 or 5 or -1, but you wouldn't have 1.5. If you wanted 1.5, it works the exact same way as the integers, but this will be referred to as a float. And floats are different because computers have a very hard time working with decimals. And you'll run into some issues later on, but that's a little too advanced for the realm of this tutorial. But floats are used when you want to store decimals, like 1.5, right? So you have 3, you have 1.5, and these things have to be kept separate. It's a little confusing because in regular math, you have 3, you have 1.5, you can add them normally. But in Python, you have to keep them separate, but you shouldn't have to worry about floats too much because most of the time you'll be sticking with integers. We also have Booleans, right? And Booleans are really important within computer science because it allows us to tell whether or not something is true or false. So after eating 1.5 pizzas, we can obviously see that we're no longer going to be hungry. So we can set that to false. And the only other state that this could be would be true, obviously. So you only have false or true. There's no other thing that you can have. And this is really important. An applicable example of this would be, has the code run already, right? So you run through a loop in your code. You want to know whether or not it's been run in another part of the program, so it can wait for that other part. You can use a Boolean to determine that. And the cool thing about Booleans is that you can set them equal to false and true throughout different parts within your program. You also have one of the most important things within Python called lists. Basically, lists store individual variables, right? So lists are a variable itself. And the cool thing about Python and all pretty much computer science language, computer language, is that variables can store a lot of different things, such as lists and dictionaries and the results from methods. And these lists themselves can store variables, objects, a whole bunch of stuff, probably half which I don't even know. So lists are really cool because you can store a large variety. This can go up to like 1 million things. One of the most important things within programming is that doing something by hand and doing something by a program is totally different, because having 1 million options is going to be impossible for you to write out. But for a computer, it's no problem. So we can use lists to store billions, millions, however many variables we want. And we can do a lot of operations on these lists. We can sort them and mix them up. And here's an example of a list that combines different things. So obviously we have U, which would be a string marked by the quotation marks. Important thing about these quotation marks, they can either be double or single, but you can't mix them. And then that's followed by a comma. These commas are necessary and they're part of syntax. And we can use syntax pretty much as the punctuation of programming languages. It's kind of hard, I'll admit. Syntax can be very confusing when you first start, but it's necessary for the computer to be able to understand your code. Next, you have Bill Watterson. He's the author of Calvin Hobbes, and that's another string. As we can see here, you don't need this underscore, right? Because it's a string itself, but within a variable, you have to have this underscore. Then we have a number, an integer, 7, and we have a float, 93.4. And this is a list. And one of the most important things about Python as well is actually having methods. So one method, which is probably the first one that you've already seen within Hello World, and one of the ones that you use the most amount of time is print. So if you press the run button, what will happen is it'll load and it'll initialize, and then it'll print all our variables here. So we have Andrew 3, 1.5, true, you, me, Bill Watterson 7, 93.4. It printed all of these things, which is really cool. Very cool. But we need to use the variables run themselves, and we need to be able to change them. So one of the things that we can do is we can reassign the things within variables. So say we have x equals 3, which would be an integer, and we print x, we're going to get 3. That makes sense. But if we want to change this to 5 for some reason, you can do that. So you can use the same variable however many times you want and just change the value. Another thing that we can do is we can do math with these variables. We can do times, we can do plus, we can do minus. I'm not going to go into the individual operations because, as I said again, I'm just trying to get the foot in the door. We can do math with these, and then we can run this, and we'll print, even though it's the exact same variable, the value changes. And then all these operations, they also follow the rules of PEMDAS, and we reassign these variables every time. So these variables also carry over, which is important. So this is a 5 here, right? 3 minus 3 is 0. And this 5 comes from above. So of course, programs follow in an order. So it starts at the top, x equals 3, and then prints. And then x equals 5, and then prints. And then it does this. But this x is still 5 here, and it does all this stuff first. So we get 5 times 5, 25, plus 3, 28, minus 3, 25. Not really PEMDAS. That would be PEMDAS. And then we're good to go. We get 25. And it changes the value of x each time, and it maintains the value of x from up here. So one of the most important things about these variables is that not only can we change them, but we can also use them over and over again from other parts within the program. We can also change the data type stored in a variable. So as a review, data types are these things. the name, strings, ints, floats, booleans, and we can change these within variables. Other languages don't allow you to do this. Once you define a variable, like in Java, right, you define the variable as an integer. And for the rest of your program, it is an integer. But with Python, we can rapidly change this and do it as many times as you want. And this is another example of why Python is incredibly intuitive, and you don't have to go through a bunch of hurdles and loops just to do simple things such as change the value. So here we have x equals hello. So we replace the value of whatever x was. In this case, it would be blank. It won't carry over from here. But now x is equal to low, and we print x, and we want to change x to a number for some reason, and we can change it to 5 and print it. If we run this, of course, you'll get hello and 5. And this maintains this value of hello disappears, but x still is there, and then we can change this. So, of course, we have all these variables, but we need to actually be able to do some things with these. And this is where these things called functions and later on methods come into play. So we've already seen one of these, which is print. And this is one example of a built-in function. You're going to be using these built-in functions pretty much constantly. And they're one of the most important and useful things within Python. So if we have print, we can use it to obviously print the value of these variables. And there's a lot of other things such as length. But basically the general syntax for a function is going to be whatever it is. So print, and then these parentheses. And these parentheses tell you what you actually want it to happen. So another example would be length, right? Boom, parentheses. And that will give you the length of something. So if you have a long list of a bunch of objects and you want to know how long that list is, you can do that. So that's basically these. And then as you can see, whatever is in these parentheses is the thing that gets printed. So this is a line of text, and this is a line of text. And I want to play a blank display before the last line of text. And then you'll have a blank, and it will still work. At least I think. Let's just make sure. And it's also important to realize that we have quotations around this because it is a string. And that's another example of the syntax. And as you can see, we get the expected result of yada, yada, yada. So that's a very simple example of using the variables themselves and actually using them as printing them. That's pretty simple. I hope we don't have any problems there. If so, let me know, speak up. And if not, we'll move on to user input, which is pretty exciting. So are we all good there? Okay, perfect. We must be doing very good. So now we're going to move on to user input. And this is another built-in function similar to print that we can use to get input from a user. So say we wanted to have a user input their name. Basically, we can give them a prompt of please enter your name, a string within input. All of these methods themselves have a lot of convoluted things. So for example, for length, right? There's multiple things that you can do with this that honestly you won't be able to remember. There's so many of these different methods, functions, built-in functions that you obviously won't be able to remember them all. But we have input, and then for example, we have another one such as range. And then we'll get all these things which are telling you what this thing can do within the parentheses. So example for range, we have start, stop, step, and you can refer and then eventually memorize them. But with input, you can put something inside of it. So here we can save the value of this input as the name, right? So as we can said, variables can be used for a bunch of different things, not just the data types. Here we kind of do have a data type because we're having it as a string, but the variable itself stores the result of this input. So we're all getting a little bit more complicated, but basically what happens is you get the input, right, from the user. So say we say, enter your age. And what this does is it creates this age into, let's say 13. And then we can assign this age to a variable later on, such as 13. So basically that's what this input is doing. And that's it spread out right there. And we can get the color, enter your favorite color. And then we can print it here by saying hello name. And then take the name we got from the input. And then we can put the color there too. This is a little more advanced example of printing these multiple things. And we're probably going to end up needing to have pluses there, but we won't worry about that. That's called string concatenation or something like that. I don't have the pronunciation nailed down. So that's probably wrong. Who knows? I'm sure Jacob in CodeDay team is just shaking his head right now. You're going to notice that you did something different with the print statement, and we used the plus statement. Commas would have worked too. And then we can move down there. So now we can demonstrate the difference between these commas and this plus, and we can see using the commas to print these multiple things. That's not too necessary, and we'll keep on moving to the other things because, as I said, we're just giving a little demo, and then we can see later on. So this is just another example of getting an input for something, storing it in these variables, using the plus, and then printing it out. Let's keep on going through comparisons. Comparisons are really useful and an example of what we can do with these individual variables. So say we have n1 here. Number 1 is 7. We have number 2, 23. This is pretty exciting, but we can actually do something with these. We can see which one is greater with this greater than sign. So if this prints whether or not number 1 is greater than number 2. And that's obviously not the case, so you get a false. This is an example of a logical comparison within Python. These can be combined with other math-related functions to do some really cool things. And this is another really important one in determining whether or not these were equal. So this is a pretty important concept here, between the difference between defining a variable and actually equal itself. So within regular math, right, let's take it back to our algebra. We have 6x equals 7, right? And this equals means that these two sides are equal, right? And then we can take away the 6, we get 7, 6. And that means x equals 7 over 6, right? And these two sides are now equal. But within computer science and languages, this equals, like here, it means that these two sides are kind of equal. But what this really means is that you're assigning this value of 23 to 2. If we wanted to check whether or not x, like say we define x up here as x equals 7 over 6. Normally you'd have to make that a float, but we won't worry about that. And we wanted to check whether or not it was equal to this. We'd have to do x equals to 7 over 6 to actually check it. And this equals is a comparison. It compares whether or not two things are equal. And this singular equals pretty much solely defines something. We get a nice little e there. So we can see this example of whether or not these numbers are equal. Obviously it's not, so it's going to print not equal. These is basically a control structure, if and else. And that allows you to determine whether or not something is happening, and then we can move on to something else. We don't really need to go over that too much because, as I'm going to keep on saying and emphasize, all these things will come up later when you start getting involved and start reading and going through a tutorial. So now that we've gone over some pretty simple things, even if you're not really able to understand this project, I want to show you how quickly Python can become usable within an actual project. So this is an old version of Python that I made for a computer science class. And this pretty much uses some pretty simple concepts that we've already learned. We've learned print, and I know there's no parentheses here. The old version of Python doesn't have those. But this pretty much prints an introduction for a little story that we've come up with. And allows us to basically print a message for the user, and uses something called methods, which are another important concept within Python. Even though these have parentheses, they're pretty similar to print, but you're pretty much defining your own functions. We have a comparison here, which decides if you should run a method, a control structure, and all this fun stuff. But what we can see is that this example of a choose your own adventure game uses very simple concepts. And the reality is that if we wanted to do something like this within another language, such as Java or C or something like that, this would honestly be very hard to do. So what I want to show you is that within a small, the small amount of concepts that you'll come up to pick up throughout these next couple of days within CodeDay can make some really amazing things really quick. So it's very important to realize that you can execute on the things you've learned much faster than any other language. And it's super important to start practicing doing that right away. Before we move into our next quick little section of really getting started within Python, getting Python set up on your computers, working with IDEs, and other stuff like that, I'm going to take another round of questions just to make sure we're all on the same page. We have some cool projects going to go. Yes, we have a Choose Your Own Adventure made by one of our own students, which is really cool. I know we don't have any parentheses because that's an old version of Python. Python 2.7.23 changed whether or not you had parentheses. That is a very good observation that you have pointed out. Do we have any more comments or questions before we move on to our next section? Just let me know. Beginners like us, we want to make a platform game for a project. Would Python be the code language we use? Yes, good. We got someone that knows what they're talking about. Pygame is a very good example of using these things. It comes with a lot of built-in things that you can use to make games. If you wanted to get started with Pygame, that's something that you can use. If you just wanted to make the game itself, and you're not too concerned with what you're doing, you can do something like Scratch. And the cool thing about Scratch is that the concepts you learn there quickly apply to Python. Python isn't going to be the language that makes games in the long run. At a professional level, Python's mainly used for data analysis, web scraping, and stuff like that. You'll mostly get C. How depth can Pygame be? It can get very in-depth, and this is pretty much an example that a very common theme that the limit is your imagination. I'm not too familiar with Pygame because I've never used it. Yes, C would be C+, and C++ would be used for games along with Unity. Java can be used for games, but if you're just starting out, Java can be pretty annoying to learn right away. How long is the class? It is going to be an hour, or until you guys keep coming up with questions. Do we want to do any more questions before we move on to the next section? The next section will be a nice 10 minutes, and then we'll do a bunch of questions at the end, hopefully. So if we're all good with questions in the chat, we'll move on to our next section. C, C++, and other Cs, pretty much, they're pretty much iterations with C. So a lot of languages are built off C. C is a very basic language itself. And then C++ and C# basically extend on the premise of C and kind of change things up with it. Python itself is kind of based off C. So thousands of things are based off C individually. For example, Windows itself can be used for C. Python can be used for web development, and it's becoming incredibly popular within web development, especially for backend. And would Java be used in Minecraft mods or no? Yes, it would be used in Minecraft mods. That's one of the most, the most popular language. So let's keep the questions. I'll answer more of those at the end about general things. We'll move on to this other important concept and getting you guys started, and then we'll come back to questions. I really do appreciate them. Thank you very much for having good questions. Let's move back to our wonderful PowerPoint. Everyone loves PowerPoint. Now that we moved on to tutorial, and we're going to get started with Python. So one of the most hardest parts with actually starting off with Python, which tricks a lot of people up, and they get to this step, they can't figure it out and they stop. And that's quite a shame, because that's exactly what we're trying to avoid, is installing Python itself. It's pretty simple, but it can trick you up. You're going to go to python.org, get the most recent version, and then store it onto your main hard drive and get the most recent version. But the goal here is that the reality is that the version of Python itself isn't very important. As we saw the differences between Python 2 and Python 3, they're pretty large. As someone pointed out, we obviously have the parentheses. But the individual versions of Python, such as 3.8, 3.9, there isn't that big of a difference. Another thing that really tricks people up is these advanced options that you get upon the first time installing it. You can pretty much go with the defaults because all of these advanced options obviously won't apply to beginners. The next most important thing and one of the most common questions that come from programmers that are getting started are IDEs. IDEs are one of the most important thing for programmers to use. And basically, Python itself is the language, right? So Python goes on your computer and you're able to use it. But IDEs allowed you to code, and they add a lot of individual functions to your coding abilities, such as auto-completing a line, highlighting all the individual things within your program, and stuff like that. So basically, some of the things that you can do with an IDE is set up like fancy formatting and colors, integration with GitHub, which allows you to store your projects on the cloud and share them with other people, and manage large projects. So if you're starting off with your project and working with a team within CodeDay, getting an IDE should probably be your first step. A good IDE that I'd highly recommend would be Pycharm. The great thing about Pycharm is that it's kind of specifically designed for Python, and it has a lot of great integrations, even within the free community version. You can get the pro version with your GitHub student account. And also Visual Studio Code is one of the biggest ones that are more popular. Personally, I'm not a big Visual Studio Code fan, but I know a ton of people that like it and a ton of people that know a lot more about it than me. But that's pretty much one of the most popular ones to use. And getting those set up can be a little tricky, but there's tons of videos online. And of course, me and all the other staff at CodeDay are ready to help for you. Obviously, the big debate, as I've said, is Pycharm and Visual Studio Code. The pretty much major difference is how lightweight they are, which means how hard taxing they are on the computer. But I wouldn't get too hung up on the IDEs because they all do the exact same thing. No matter what IDE you have, you're all going to be coding with them, and you're all going to be able to make the exact same programs. I had a friend of mine that for his entire time, he used the default Python one called idle. And then I told him about IDEs, and he's like, wow. And this is after he'd be programming for like a year. And then he just found out about an IDE. So they're not a necessity, but they're something that I definitely get going as soon as you can. Let's also move on to kind of a scarier topic, but it's referred to as tutorial hell. And this is pretty much a topic that deals with getting so stuck up with tutorials that you don't actually start making any projects. And this is something that we really tried to avoid at CodeDay and in general. And it's basically escaping from the tutorials themselves and moving into projects themselves. So one of the reasons why it was so short, not only time with my little tutorial session, is that you yourself are pretty much the best learner, right? I'd highly recommend getting a good tutorial, but actually implementing those concepts into something good is only going to be done throughout a project, because the tutorials themselves, they're only going to teach you the concepts, right? I'm going to teach you what a variable is, but until you truly start using them, working with others and teaching them, is when you're really going to get the firm grasp of these concepts. And projects themselves, even though they might be included within the tutorials, and they'll allow you to be implemented, I have a strong belief that you should be working on your own personal projects within CodeDay. So obviously this is the best example within CodeDay to be able to use these projects, work with the team, and make something cool. So obviously you yourselves and you guys don't really need to worry about this, because by partaking within CodeDay, you're pretty much avoiding this. Another constant question that is comes up is beginner projects. What should I be doing as a beginner? And it honestly feels pretty tough because when you don't know a lot and you don't really know what you can do with Python, it's hard for you to come up what you want Python to do. And honestly, my advice for you would be to start off with something simple. Start off ridiculously simple. Make a program that prints out someone's name, right? And then keep on ramping it up. One of the things that I've had and that I've learned is that it's a bad idea to make this massive, expansive project, right? For my first CodeDay, at least first virtual one, I did like a stock market thing, right? And it was pretty cool, but how much I was able to do and how much I needed to get help with, there was a large disparity, right? So you want to be able to comfortably fly into these projects and get help and work with your tutorial and your teammates, but you want to be able to make something that you're able to, first of all, churn out, and that you're able to implement things as fast as possible. If you get stuck within your project, you're going to stop learning. So it's important that you keep on expanding your projects and making new things, which is ultimately the most important thing. And my biggest advice is when you get past the tutorial phase where you're picking up new skills and you're wondering how to implement those skills themselves, is working with projects that you're passionate about, right? If you're really passionate about, say, web development, you really like websites, you really like, say you're on your school's speech and debate team, and you use software that pulls information and get news articles. Looking into web scraping and pulling those articles would be a good thing. If you play golf, right, making a scorecard thing that would count your scores within Python is something that you could do. And making like things that you're able to use and things that you're passionate about will make it a lot easier to make these projects themselves and stay motivated with them. Let's move on to questions and answers. So I know you guys had a lot of good questions at the start, and I'd love to answer as much of these as I can. So please let them fly. Let's get started. What kind of project should I work on if I'm interested within AI? So one of the great things about Python is that AI itself is pretty much very closely entwined with Python, and it's getting more and more recognized that Python is one of the best AI coding languages. There's a thing called TensorFlow, which is pretty much a Google project that works within Python, and it's a big AI project. AI itself can get incredibly complicated very quickly. So if you're just starting out with Python, I wouldn't recommend getting started with AI, but AI can do a lot of incredible things, and TensorFlow and other libraries can make it a lot easier. So I definitely recommend picking up Python if you're interested within AI. But if you're just starting out, I wouldn't recommend as doing Python as your first thing. What are some projects I can do within Tracy the Turtle? So Turtle is a Python module. And modules are kind of like things you can import to use their functionalities that allows you to draw things on your screen. And Turtle's really good, first of all, because it's pretty simple and it allows you to immediately see the results, right? So it's not like something some other projects likes with AI where it's kind of hard to know what you're doing. If you are able to code a line within Turtle, you're automatically going to see it. And this is a very popular beginner project, making circles and all different kinds of shapes within Turtle. You can start making art within Turtle. You can do animations there, and it's a really good starting point. If you're looking for a project to do, try looking for something to do within Turtle. Pygame was the website I wanted to use to try and make my team a platform game. Correct. So Pygame is another module that allows you to make games within Python. Platform games themselves might be kind of tough to make within Python if you're just starting out. But if you have some experience, Python is the thing to use. If you're just starting out, so basically I'm going to give you like a scale, right? If you're just starting out and you only want to make a platform game, I'd recommend doing something in Scratch because that allows you to input a lot of things and learn computer science principles and make the game. If you want to learn a programming language, I definitely recommend doing Pygame and Python and getting started with that game. Even if it has to be something incredibly simple, just getting experience starting out within Python is very good. Web development for beginners. So if you're just starting out, you're going to have to start out by learning HTML, hypertext markup language, which is something that I'm starting to learn right now as well. And that'll get you started within web development. If you're looking to do back-end web development, that will use Python and something called the Django or Flask, and that uses Python later on. Why isn't Python used as commonly with professional work of it? Well, Python is the most used programming languages in some case, and it does a lot of different things within the professional level. But the reality is that languages are used for a bunch of different things. For example, HTML is what you use for websites. Java can be used for games, but C++ and C# I think is used for games a lot. C itself can make operating systems such as Windows. So each language is used for different things. Python is used for a bunch of things within the backend, as I said, within websites, so doing the functions and the operations, and then within simple projects, right, and web scraping, and getting something going really quick. Because the big difference within Java, right, and all these other languages that they might be able to do more. They might be able to do it faster. Like in running, like it's a lot faster to run. But Python itself is a lot easier to code, and it's a lot easier to get going. Is it easier to learn with others? It definitely is, because others allow you to, like if you have a problem, you're able to go to something else. I'd highly recommend forming a team, even if it's someone from this group, and getting started within a project there. And then also using the mentors within CodeDay is a really good resource. Using the mentors that you got after you form a team, and then also using help desk is a really good way to get help from others. What projects can I do with Python that apply to web development? So the problem with here is that if you're just starting out, using Python for web development is pretty tricky, because using Django can be pretty tough because you need to use that on top of HTML. So if you solely want to do web development, I'd highly recommend starting out with HTML and looking into something called Django after you've mastered your Python fundamentals. Should I try to experiment in as many project areas as possible, or work a lot in a single area and get really that depth? I would recommend to go wide, especially when you're just starting out. Honestly, you don't know exactly what you like. And there's many different things. You don't want to set yourself on one thing like web development and then realize later on that you like something else. So I try to go as wide as possible, learn as many things that you can, and then set yourself on one thing. I wouldn't try to learn as many programming languages as you can, because it's worse to learn like a bunch of languages but only know the start. It's good to know one consistently, one or two. Like I'd highly recommend you guys learning Java after Python, but you want to get a look into as many areas as possible to see which one you really like. And can we talk a little bit about cybersecurity works? Python really isn't used within cybersecurity a ton. I'd highly recommend going to a thing called Code Cup, which is one of the events that I work on within CodeDay, and working with that revolves around cybersecurity. There's also an organization that you might have at your school called Cyber Patriot, which is really good for cybersecurity. But Python itself, it's used in a lot of ethical hacking, but at least at a beginner level, it'll be hard to implement Python within cybersecurity. A good thing that you can do with Python and cybersecurity is that you could start looking at like ciphers and password crackers within Python right away. Types of list in Python, and how does Python for web develop work? So lists in Python are used to store a wide variety of data, and Python for web development itself is divided into two different things, right? You have front end, which is what you see on the actual browser, and you have stuff in the back end, which is what does the operation. So for example, you want to have an algorithm, which is just a set of instructions that determines what YouTube videos you watch. So everything that you see on YouTube will be in HTML or JavaScript or something like that, but the algorithm itself that determines the recommendations that you get is likely done in something like Python within the backend. So that's done with something like Flask or Django, as I mentioned before. Best Python projects that look good on internships and resumes. Would you recommend any? So the big thing about like making a project exclusively for an internship, like there's not one that specifically looks good. Like there's no secret formula to recruiters and internships. What I truly recommend is looking for something, as I mentioned before, something that you're passionate about. So say you really like biking or something, doing a project around there would look really good. Taking one of the interests you have and directly applying it to something you know. Another good thing that internships want to see is they want to see you be able to work with other members and work with a team. And then also implement the project totally, right? So only having one end of the project isn't something you want. If you're able to create a website and do all the backend for it, that's incredibly impressive to people looking at your internships. And it's also very important to try learning new things and going wide, as I said, so having a wide variety of things that you know. Cybersecurity, since web development is part of it, how does ethical hacking work? So in terms of ethical hacking, there's two different parts, right? So you have the hackers that are like the common stereotype, which are like hacking into like websites and stuff like that. And you have ethical hackers, which are pretty much trying to stop these malicious hackers that are trying to steal things and do other bad things. And how ethical hacking works is that there's a lot of cybersecurity measures put in place, such as things that check passwords and maintain databases. And basically what you can do as an ethical hacker is run something called penetration testing. So basically the concept is that if you're not able to hack it, then someone else won't as well. So you're basically testing the measures of security that are in place before someone that's more maliciously trying to do it later on. Cybersecurity and web development. Cybersecurity itself, cybersecurity, I'd really recommend starting off with a good tutorial, looking into your school's Cyber Patriot if you have it, and looking online for cybersecurity. Personally, I don't know a lot about using cybersecurity within Python, if that's what you're trying to wonder about. Cybersecurity in general, you can find a ton of stuff online, and you can develop it with Python later on, because Python is used for a lot for equity hacking. Will learning Java as a first language be fine? Absolutely. So Python and Java are kind of interchangeable. I'm kind of learning both at the same time. Java is really good because it's pretty similar to Python, but it also allows you to navigate to other computer science languages and really raw computer science pretty quickly. So Python's a little harder than Python to get started because there's some things that you have to learn, such as really working with those data types, working with modifiers, and quickly learning object-oriented programming. But Java is a really great language and allows you to transfer your skills over to other languages such as C++, C, JavaScript, and other things like that quickly because it involves a little more things like that. Black hat, white hat, and gray hat hackers, yes. So black hat, that's like a malicious bad hacker. A white hat hacker would be an ethical hacker trying to prevent the black hat hackers. And then a gray hat hacker is kind of someone in the middle. I think that kind of does both. How did I start with programming and coding? That's a very good question. I actually started pretty much exactly where you guys were. So I kind of dabbled a little bit within computer projects at school, like a little computer class that I took, which was called Introduction to Computer Science, but really ended up just revolving around like Word and pretty much basically using a computer. I dabbled a little bit with Scratch. And then I kind of by chance actually ended up going to my first CodeDay, just like you guys. And that's when I really got involved in seeing the applications of computer science. And then from there, really learning Python, I went through something called Code Academy. They run some really good programs. I will put a link there to Code Academy so you can get started there. Their courses can be very expensive. They can be very expensive, but they have some pretty good tutorials and they're really based on actually using them. Another resource that I'd recommend would be Free Code Camp. They're pretty good. I've heard good things about them. Learning through that. And then also one of the other things I was just going to talk about is courses on Udemy. So for example, with this one right here, which is a free code for a Udemy class, which is here called Automate the Boring Stuff, which is pretty popular within the Python community and getting involved within Python itself. Khan Academy for Computer Science obviously is a very good resource. The Reddit link that I just sent out, you'll find that a lot where people send out free courses for Udemy, and you can find some really good. I have about like $900 in Udemy courses. Whether or not I'm actually going to use them is another story. But you can get a lot of free Udemy courses from Learn Programming, a subreddit, because people give out free codes. I think this code right here is December 2020 free 2, and that expires today on the 4th. So if you're really excited about computer science, I'd highly recommend going to Udemy and get involved with that. Is it never too late to get and start an internship in the computer science field? I'm a senior in high school entering a CS major without any CS knowledge. Well, I'm a senior in high school as well, and I have actually very little computer science knowledge compared to some of these other people at CodeDay. It is definitely never too late. There's a lot of people that get a degree in something else, like English, for example, and then they switch on to computer science a lot later on in life. Like you can be 25, you can be 30. Age definitely won't hold you back, and it's definitely not too late to start. You'll have a bunch of people that will tell you, well, if you haven't started programming at 13, you're doomed. That definitely isn't the case. What really makes it up is that you're passionate about it. What I'd highly recommend you do, Matthew, is that you get really involved within computer science and things like CodeDay. You start picking up the skills necessary. and then apply for another CodeDay program or something at your school or within your community called Code Labs, which are actually direct internships within the computer science guild, so you can develop your skills for a CS major. Another big thing about CS majors is learning a lot of math, because that can be one of the hardest things to do within computer science in the first couple of years. So if you're working on these math skills, you'll definitely have a good start, and most colleges will have you do an introductory computer science as well. Question about Code Labs. So Code Labs is another CodeDay program with a very similar name, but it's pretty much a bunch of companies that come together and they give you a chance to do an internship. I applied this summer, but didn't even get accepted. And look where I am now. It can be very hard to get into, so I wouldn't bank on it. So definitely apply to multiple internships, but it's a great opportunity for you to get involved within internships themselves and work with a real life company, such as like high ranking companies. I think we had Uber there. I think we had some representation from Facebook maybe. And you're able to work on major projects within Code Lab. Yes, that happens around the summer. You'll see a bunch of internships come about in the summer, because that's pretty much when everyone's off work and off school. So definitely, if you're just starting out now, what I'd highly recommend is that you get super involved within computer science at the end of the school year. Yes, it will be on the same website, and we'll have announcements within the same Discord. Get super involved within computer science, start learning those skills, start learning multiple languages so you're able to apply to as many internships as you can and get started right away. And I also wouldn't worry if you're not able to get an internship right away. I didn't get a single internship last summer, but really learning skills and working on your own projects is incredibly important. With Python especially, you're able to do a lot of things. You can even like start your own company around coding. You can directly get involved with starting websites and working within Python. You can also do some very advanced things really quickly, such as web scraping, data analysis, AI. You can use a lot of different modules such as Pygame, Turtle, stuff like that, really quickly to make projects that have things that you can really see happening and get involved there. And yes, it will be on the same website. Any other questions about Python programming in general? I know I really went fast there to get through as many questions as I can. Web scraping, yes, perfect. So basically, as I mentioned before, here I'll do a quick little share. How about that? Because this is something that I'm trying to learn as well. I'll move my little screens around. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. Oh. Get some sound effects as well. Let me close this, share screen. So here's a website, of course. I'm gonna hope that you guys all know what websites are. But what this is coded within is something called HTML. And maybe you've heard of this before, but if we pull and inspect here, we can actually see this raw HTML. And what web scraping does with things such as Beautiful Soup and Selenium, it allows you to actually access these things within a website and directly pull the data from them. So say you had a Wikipedia page or something and you wanted to pull all the data about every single celebrity, right? Well, that would be pretty hard to do manually. It would be very hard to do to get all this data about celebrities. But if you had something called web scraping, within web scraping, you can quickly go through multiple websites incredibly quickly and pull this data. So basically what web scraping is all about is that you're able to find one of these elements, such as a header, and then for every website that you can access, you can directly pull the data from this header. So for example, we see this data menu. We can find all these links. We can get the logos. You can get the links. Web scraping is pretty advanced. It can get advanced very quickly, but there's a lot of great tutorials and a lot of great resources within Beautiful Soup. So you can pull this stuff. You can grab all this data and perform operations later on. One of my first project within CodeDay was used web scraping. within a stock market scraper, and we pulled data from a website that displayed stocks and then did analysis on it. So that's really cool. Good question. What else do we got going on? Yes, we got an example. We have someone describing web scraping here. Unlike screen scraping method, yes, it scrapes the underlying HTML and then you can replicate it other places. Yes, good description. That is perfect. Free CodeCamp is good too. I'd highly recommend that, and it's also free, as in the name, compared to something like Codecademy. What tutorial you actually use, because there's obviously so many, isn't the most important thing. The really most important thing is that you're able to implement the things that you learn, right? So you can do as many tutorials as you want. You can use the best tutorial around. You can have the best teacher. But until you're able to implement all the skills you've learned within projects directly, you're going to have a really hard time. So it's much more important for you able to develop your own projects, implement the skills themselves, then get the best tutorial. So make sure you don't get trapped in the tutorial hell that I mentioned earlier, where you're just doing as many tutorials as you can, but not actually implementing them within your own projects. Because that's what will really get you the programming skills and get you involved in a lot of other things. So quickly learn. Like say you wanted to do a basic thing that implementing web scraping, right? You had a project that did web scraping, but you quickly figure out that, well, to do this web scraping, you got to figure out HTML. And to learn HTML, you need to pick up CSS and JavaScript. So you'll quickly learn a wide variety of different things just by doing projects. Please explain projects like any workable program. Yes, so a program itself, obviously you can have a pretty simple program such as print hello world. That would be a program, right? But a project itself typically refers to doing a lot of more expansive things. You combine multiple aspects. You combine sometimes multiple files, multiple programs, multiple programming languages even to accomplish a greater thing. So example of a program would be like print out a large list of numbers. So you could print out 1 through 100, right, using a for loop. But a project itself might take all those numbers, be able to use them to find a random year or find a random number, compare it to a guess from someone else. You can do a guessing game. If you want some basic, easy projects, some major examples would be, for example, coding Hangman or coding a choose your adventure thing. We're able to choose which option. You could do something like Mad Libs. You could do something like kind of like a storyteller within Python. You could do like games like tic-tac-toe. Those are all projects because they force you to implement multiple aspects of programming and really get involved within more than just Python itself and individual things. A website, yes, good description of websites. Perfect. Cool. Do we have any other questions? If you have any questions that come up later on, I'd highly recommend you can either directly message me so I can feel important, or you can ask help desk. You can ask any of our staff members. You can ask the rest of your team. And of course, the internet itself is one of the best resources within programming itself. Do you recommend being a full stack developer? Not at the start. A full stack developer kind of refers to being able to do everything, right? So you're able to do the front end, the look of the website, you're able to do the back end, what happens in the back. So doing all of that can be incredibly hard. And I'd highly recommend starting out with one programming language and then slowly bouncing out to other things, right? So obviously you're not gonna be able to learn everything all at once. You're not able to be a pro at everything all at once. So I'd recommend getting decent at something and then branching out to other things. Obviously the end goal for every programmer is to be a full stack dev. Like if you're a full stack dev, you're kind of like the creme de la creme. Like you're the top of the pack, you know a wide variety of skills to a very sufficient level to put together your own project with multiple languages and stuff. So obviously that's the end goal. But I definitely wouldn't recommend like starting out like that. Like, because if you start out with trying to learn everything, you won't be able to learn anything at a sufficient level, right? if you can print hello world in every single programming language, that's really cool. But you won't be able to make anything, you won't be able to start developing projects. So I'd recommend diversifying yourself once you get comfortable with a singular language. Okay, if that's all the questions you have, thank you very much for this well-weighed workshop. Thank you for attending. You guys were a wonderful audience, especially asking these questions, staying involved. And if you have any questions later on, I know some of you wanted to get involved with stuff, ask in the chat on Discord. You can message me directly if you really want to. You can message any of the staff members. And have fun, guys. Please let me know if you have anything coming up. Message the help desk, get started on those projects, and attend the other workshops, and you guys will all be good to go. Thank you guys very much, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Nope.